as if the world needed one more. A Joe Schmoe film. On Richardson Bay, just across from San Francisco, sits a community where homes don't rest on land, they float. Today, more than 400 houseboats line these docks, from colorful artist shacks to million-dollar architectural showpieces. But this story didn't begin with polished marinas. It began with leftovers from the war. During World War II, Sausalito's waterfront looked nothing like it does today. The Marin shipyard stretched for nearly a mile, an industrial city rising almost overnight. Here, Liberty ships were assembled with urgency. Every weld, every rivet, every part, a race against time. At its peak, more than 20,000 men and women worked in shifts around the clock. Smoke filled the air, sparks lit the night sky, and steel hulls took shape on the edge of the bay. Back then, these piers weren't homes or quiet retreats. They were lifelines of war, sending ships and hope across the Pacific. Today, that same stretch of shoreline tells a different story. The roar of machinery has faded into the lapping waves against wooden docks. What once launched Liberty ships now shelters colorful floating homes. Each houseboat is unique, leaning, shifting, sometimes improvised, but always alive with character of the people who built them. Painters, musicians, and wanderers turn this former shipyard into a canvas for community. Instead of smoke and steel, you'll find gardens on decks, sculptures on porches, and laughter carrying across the water. However, the legacy of Marin's ship remains, but it has been rewritten, transformed from a place of war into a haven of creativity and resilience. In the 1960s, Sausalito's docks became a counterculture haven. Painters, poets, and musicians crowded the floating homes. Zen philosopher Alan Watts delivered his talks from a houseboat that rocked gently on the tide. And legend has it, Otis Redding found the inspiration here to write Dock of the Bay. Life on the water was raw and imperfect. Many homes leaned at odd angles, patched together from scavenged lumber and driftwood. Utility hookups were improvised from garden hoses, extension cords, and strung out across the docks. Winters were damp and cold, summers bright and restless. But in that fragile balance, a community thrived. Nights were filled with music drifting across the bay. Days brought impromptu art shows, dockside gatherings, and shared labor of keeping the houses afloat. This is Sausalito's houseboat era, a place where freedom and rebellion weren't abstract ideas. They were lived, every single day, on the water. By the 1970s, Sausalito's docks had transformed into a floating village unlike anything else in America. Hand-built shacks leaned against repurposed ferries, barges became studios. With no formal sewerage, electricity, or fire protection, county officials saw danger where the residents saw freedom. They described the waterfront as lawless, unsafe, and unsustainable. As the 70s rolled into the 80s, pressure from developers and Marin County regulators mounted. What began as warnings soon escalated into the infamous houseboat wars. Eviction notices were posted, docks were condemned, and at times the county sent in sheriffs and bulldozers. The standoff turned the waterfront into a stage of protest. Residents chaining themselves to pilings, building barricades, and even rowing out to block demolition crews. The conflict dragged on for years, but from that struggle came a compromise. New marinas were built, bringing plumbing, electrical hookups, and building codes. The floating homes lost some of their outlaw charm, but they gained permanence. Today's colorful, regulated neighborhoods carry that legacy, the spirit of defiance and creativity that refused to sink, even when the tide of progress tried to wash it away. Through the 1980s and 90s, the homes themselves transformed. Many of the old patched-together vessels that once symbolized rebellion were slowly replaced with custom-built floating houses. Architecture began to flourish, some designs whimsical, with curving walls and porthole windows, others sleek and modern, built of glass and steel that shimmered against the bay. The docks evolved too, shifting from a loose, off-grid enclave to an organized, celebrated community. Power lines were buried, walkways were repaired, and the floating village that once defied the system began to define it, an icon of coastal creativity. Today, guided tours draw thousands each year. Visitors stroll the docks, cameras in hand, marveling at both artistry and the engineering that keep these homes afloat. What began as a haven for outcasts has become a living museum, where innovation meets nostalgia, and the spirit of Sausalito still drifts softly on the tide. From shipyard grit to counterculture refuge to regulated marina life, the story of Sausalito's floating homes is one of resilience and reinvention. Born from the remnants of war, these docks rose out of abandoned shipyards after World War II. Craftsmen, veterans, and wanderers salvaged scraps of steel and wood to build the first floating homes. Rough, improvised, but full of spirit. By the 1960s, the bay became refuge for artists, musicians, and philosophers chasing freedom on the water. It was raw and chaotic, but it was alive. Decades later, the rebellion gave way to regulation. The homes became refined, the docks rebuilt, the community redefined. But the heart still beats with the same creative rhythm. Each pier holds a story. World War II barges beneath glass decks, bohemian dreams beneath modern design. This is the story of Sausalito's floating homes, past and present, still rocking gently on the bay.